As you just read in the title, dev costs will not be fixed anytime soon. I draw this conclusion because dev costs have been a matter of discussion for literal years, and especially heavy in the last 2 years. In Jagex's recent news post, they said, I quote, "This is the first step on a long journey towards understanding all of the complexities around reworking dev in RuneScape." Like, what does that even mean? How is it the first step? We've had 6 free dev weeks, a boss that gives perma-free devs in normal mode, and we still have a long journey to go, and this is the first step? I'll be retired by the time they fix dev costs at this rate. Look, I'm not trying to bash on Jagex here, and any dev cost related update is a welcome one, including this one. Absolutely, that's a fact. But I just expected something different in the first step to changing dev cost than more data gathering through free dev weeks. I mean, they could have just said free dev weeks for specific bosses in the recent live streams. But then Mod Osborne did say that we shouldn't get our hopes up, so I don't know why they were being so secretive if it was just more data gathering through free dev weeks.
December is going to have something around dev costs. Can you elaborate what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get people's hopes up too much, because I know this has been a huge topic throughout the year, I remember.
Now, what I find interesting is that they have to gather more data about specific bosses. I'm not entirely sure what they're looking for, as this Frank's Death thing or PVM week for specific bosses would obviously increase engagement for said boss because the devs are free. They already mentioned getting useful data from the first free dev week, which was back in January of 2021. Data showed Jagex that free dev weeks increase player engagement for all bosses, and they were even talking about potential solutions like a soft and hard cap, consecutive dev cost discount, and more. Just listen to the segment I took from the livestream after the first free dev week.
We're still in discussions about the best place to lower it and the best way to go about it. And if we do something like a hard cap or a soft cap, where that comes into play. But I feel that the past week has given us a lot of good information in terms of why it's a good thing. It's helped us kind of make that more of a soft argument rather than like a purely data-driven argument of, well, this is really bad.
I think your last point was solid and is one of the stronger points for me. I think sometimes it's really difficult to take something away from a bunch of numbers, thrust it in front of you, and what we got there was concrete proof that players engage more with PVM, then they become more motivated or less disenfranchised with the whole onboarding process, learning how to kill racks, telos, etc. without dev costs, getting more experimental, doing crazy things. Like, we have that evidence now that we can say, hey, look, we can make changes to this without breaking the entire like economy.
And right now, behind the scenes, the Combat Council, aka the combat-related team at Jagex, including J-mods like Mod PI, Mod Ramen, Mod Orion, are working on some kind of prototype, and yet they need more data, which is I just find it really odd. I'd love to know what kind of data they're actually looking for. Is it to find out if dev costs are really keeping players from trying out bosses? I mean, you could conclude that if players do a lot of, let's say, Angel of Death during that free dev week and then continue to do afterwards, that would mean players are afraid of dev costs during the learning process. Or are they trying to figure out if dev costs are the real reason people avoid group content? And the truth is, nobody knows. We can only assume, and as far as I'm concerned, they already have a solution in the works. Roll the clip.
So yeah, what has happened at the moment is that our Combat Council has pitched a design. They're prototyping things at the moment. That's really kind of bubbled up to have our attention. And we're in the process of, and it is a very early process, of just deciding what we do with that, whether or not that goes on the schedule. There are a few things to decide there.
So Mod Osborne just said whether or not it goes on the schedule.
And it is a very early process of just deciding what we do with that, whether or not that goes on the schedule.
Does that mean if it's not on the schedule, it's either coming much later, which is why we have this first step December this year, or was that change shelved? I am fully aware I'm making a lot of assumptions here and I'm nitpicking really badly, so I'm going to move on to something else. So one of the reasons I'm making this video is because I was very much surprised that nothing big happened. This entire data gathering free dev week thing is just another free dev week. Why did they not do something like this? Where instead of doing the same thing except for specific bosses, implementing certain solutions they've thought of themselves for a single week. For example, a hard or soft cap on dev costs, or a consecutive dev discount thingy. Whatever it may be, they have solutions. They've already mentioned a bunch of them on stream. Why not implement them for a single week, see what impact it has on the engagement of certain bosses, see if there's more gold coming in than coming out, and all that stuff. I don't see why they wouldn't do that. It just doesn't make sense. They've quite literally said what the issue is, being, high-level players paying too much or paying uneven amounts for dying, and low-level players being scared of, trying out bosses because dev costs are so high, and they have acknowledged it's there, and they've been keeping an eye on the community, and they even acknowledged, like, RS Guy's video, and that it was a good video, and they were looking into it every single time. Why aren't they, testing different solutions with different combat weeks instead of doing the same thing, except for specific bosses? I generally can't see what else that could add to whatever they're looking for, because they already did 6 different combat weeks, one during a period where pretty much everything was focused on the Elder Gold Rush dungeon. I'm probably missing something. Like, 1, I don't work at Jagex. 2, I'm not a developer, so I wouldn't know how much work that is. Hopefully this is something I'll be able to understand in the future, because right now it's pretty vague on what they're trying to actually find or test with these combat weeks or free dev weeks. My personal solution would still be dev cost reduction based on kill count. For example, at 0 kill count you'd be paying 0 GP every time you need to reclaim your items. At 1 kill count, 2.5 or maybe 5%, and then at 25 to 50 kill count you'd be paying the normal amount, which should be hard capped to maybe like 2 to 5 mil. That number would obviously be up for discussion, but reducing the dev cost based on your kill count would motivate learners to actually try, because until they get a high amount of kill count, they're not going to be paying much at all. And if you were to introduce a cap on the dev costs in addition to that, I think high level players would be happy as well. Just my 2 cents. Before I end off the video, I'd like to remind you all this is not some kind of personal attack on any of the J-mods. In fact, Mod Osborne, for example, is really open on streams and one of my favorite J-mods. I just expected a little more from such a large company in this amount of time. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.